Welcome to the Bright Commerce Podcast.
Episode 20 of the Bright Commerce Podcast. Today we're talking ADA compliance for websites. I'm Carlos Caneja, your host, along with your co-host, Judd Dunnigan.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, Judd. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking, Carlos.
All right. Today we have an awesome guest. His name is Colin Hickey. He is with accessiBe. They are one of the leading accessibility platforms in the industry. How you doing, Colin?
All is well. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Carlos.
Yeah, Colin, give us a little bit of an intro about yourself, about the company, accessiBe,
Sure.
what you guys do.
Yep. So I am a partner success manager over here at accessiBe. I've been here 3 months in March. 3 years by March. And I'm looking forward to, answering your questions and, kind of go through some use cases and how we're making the websites accessible one website at a time.
Okay, yeah, we're excited to have you, man. This has been a tough one for years. So we're glad you're here. This is going to be Q&A type format, so we're just going to fire away if that's okay.
Let's do it.
All right. So, for anyone new to ADA compliance, specifically on the web, tell us what that means to them, whether they're a store owner or they're a visitor.
Sure. So let me actually take a few steps back. So with regards to ADA compliance, when I first started working at accessiBe, my first thought was brick and mortar locations. So that has now moved to websites. And really this all took flight back in 2018. There was a lawsuit against Domino's Pizza, go figure. Long story short, there was a user that was unable to effectively check out, right, to carry out on their pizza. To expedite this a bit more, this got bumped up all the way to the Supreme Court, right? And it was then where the DOJ affirmed websites are a place of public accommodation and simply put should be treated as such. Now, moving forward to today, there are, rules and regulations, of course, and the standard that the ADA uses, it's a very dense 1,000-page guidebook known as the WCAG.
So I have a question about that lawsuit. I don't know if you know, was it someone that was blind, or like what was the disability that,
Great question. Yeah, so it would. Yep. So it was specific to those that, or he or she, for those that are visually impaired. So they were trying to effectively navigate a screen reader and keyboard navigation, but unable to do so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think what they were unable to check out, ultimately what it came down to.
Yeah, the person wanted their pizza, couldn't get it. That's a serious problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Like what I don't understand is like, and this is where I think there's a lot of frivolous lawsuits out there. Unfortunately, there's good reasons to have a lawsuit, and there's bad, people out there just trying to make a dime. We've been trained for years to call Pizza Hut to get a delivery. Like, why would they stop doing that and try this new process and say, oh my gosh, this is so hard for me to check out when you can easily call? Like that's the part I don't like. I feel like it went all the way to the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court to rule that in the favor, but it's like, do we have to spend that much taxpayer money to, like, if you have avenues to buy? This is the part I don't get. Yeah.
That's a fair question, and they're still working out the kinks, so to speak. But at the end of the day, the way that they look at it, or the way that at least that I glean from the standards and the regulations, even though, and it is unfortunate, especially for those that are mom and pop, it's not necessarily expensive to meet everything, crossing T's, dotting I's. But when it comes down to the nuts and bolts, not every website or not every company can you call and make an order. And furthermore, going back to treating it like it's equal for everyone. That's the main point of interest, as to someone with a disability shouldn't have, less access, right? We all know, for better or worse, this world that we live in now, it's all on our phone. Everything is in digital format. And so, as we continue, we're adjusting with these times.
And I think you brought up a good point too. Like, how come, these small businesses are being targeted? But when you think about it, shouldn't it be a shared responsibility to the browser? Cause like you're saying it's the website's fault, but it's the browser that's delivering it, the actual website itself, which is what you build towards. You think the browsers would automatically build these tools into them versus letting this just keep happening. That would be a better, I think, tool.
That's a fair question, and I swear I'm not yesing you, but it really just comes down to, not to be a cliche, but not all websites are the same, right?
Yeah.
Some are more complex
Right.
than others. Now, there are situations if it is very, when I say basic, right? Not too many templates, very straightforward, not really dynamic. You don't have any moving background, no GIFs or things like that. There are instances where you can just simply, as you're making the website, they will provide the suggestions to help make it compliant. But going back to your initial point, why is it beholden on the browser itself? I think that's above my pay grade, but at the end of the day, it's a valid question.
I think now we're starting to see more ADA type settings or
Yep.
accessibility settings, not just on web browsers, but also in operating systems. I think iOS has it, Android has it, Mac OS has it as well too.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of time. I feel like when these solutions first came out, nobody was thinking accessibility. Now we're like reaching the masses, and
It would be nice for a law to come out to allow a grace period for these instead of just a straight up lawsuit. Like, I'm suing you for, like, because it's the Wild West, and the law is based off of a law that started in 1994 before the internet was really existing. Which we know how the government works. Let's forget, they haven't even been able to catch up since 1994 for the ADA compliance. I mean, I think addressing it from the law standards too would be super helpful, because that would really, because small businesses, like you said, these are like Domino's pizzas or whatever, the big business, but small
Massive.
businesses,
Yeah.
they're getting hit. What is like the typical lawsuit for a small business?
So great question. And I'm going to try to decipher it because there's a few parts I want to focus on. But if I do forget, please allow me to circle back. So, with regards to, getting a quote unquote warning, so there are different complaints, right? There are demand letters and there are lawsuits. Now, with regards to, it really comes down to, and this is a bit of a gray area, meaning comes down to level and extent, right? If the website in itself, there's no signs of showing remediation, there's no reporting to show this is what the website looked like before and after, even if it's not completely up to standards, that's where, the person in charge, the judge would, look at it and understand, is this, meeting the criteria of reaching a lawsuit, or can we move forward with politely providing suggestions, allowing that company, that individual to make those adjustments, and then move forward, right? Because at the end of the day, you are right. There are certainly law firms that this is all they do. I always use the comparison of, for anyone that's watched Breaking Bad, these are Saul Goodman kind of lawyers, right?
Better call Sal.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Saul.
And so there are 4 law firms that equate to roughly 75% of all lawsuits. So they're churning these
And
out.
I want to add now, they're the complete bottom feeders of
Yeah,
this
it's
earth right
awful.
now.
And it's not for the right reasons too, right? Because it'd be one thing, right, if it's strictly for, those that feel like they're being left out. And there are people that are being left out. But then there are also people like the Better Call Sauls that see that, quote unquote, as a weakness in a business bottom line, and they're exploiting it. Right. And so, not to come full circle, but that's how we see ourselves. Right. Even though there are frustrations and there's plenty and they're valid. I'm not going to say that all of this makes sense with regards to the fines. Should it be a slap on the wrist? Should it be as expensive as it is? Each one is a bit unique. That's why we have a variety of plans, going from our widget, litigation support for premium plans. Right. So if there is a complaint and our solution, is active on said website, we have pledges for $15,000 reimbursement. Furthermore, we also have manual remediation. Right. And then in a perfect world, we suggest having both a hybrid approach. But with all that being said, we understand that it can be expensive meeting these needs. So that's why we have a plethora of options.
And I think you brought up, like, what type, and I think we're going off script too. Sorry, Carlos. I'm just asking a bunch of questions because this interests me. Just let me know. But like, if you have just a standard brand site, just, it's not a store, it's more of a B2B, just a
Yeah.
business service, are you at risk? So let's say you're a law firm or just someone that's selling a business
Yeah.
service. Are they at risk as well? Like, or is that make it a little bit more complicated for a lawyer to go?
So there are two layers to that question. The first layer, by definition, anything that can be accessed by the public is, deemed to follow this criteria. But
Good
with that
Lord.
being said, that being said, the large majority is B2C. Right. And
Gotcha.
so it's not me trying to evade some of these questions, but it's just some of this, there's no absolutes, right? And so that's why I have to, it's mostly geared towards B2C, but are there, instances where it is B2B? Yes, but primarily focused on B2B.
Gotcha. Okay. I'll let you go to the next one there, Charles.
My own
Yeah, which
question.
one?
Well, I think one of the things that, what are the common accessibility problems when auditing a website? Like some of the issues that come up that people may not even know about, like when it comes to when a person comes, what are they not getting that a
Yeah.
standard site has that's not being compliant?
So great question, first of all. As I go through these various areas of focus and the level of severity, by no means, am I suggesting that one is worth more than the other. But when it comes down to what are some of the more common complaints, what are the ones that are more difficult from a bandwidth perspective, and from financially speaking, how difficult it is and the length of time it takes to remediate. Right. The first and foremost, alt text. Technically speaking, throughout a website, for every picture, every icon, there needs to be an alt text, or commonly known as, or simply put, a description. And so for every picture, every drop down menu, there needs to be a title or an adequate quote unquote description for each one.
So
That can take.
half the internet messes this up because they
Yes,
stuff
yes.
SEO terms in their alt
Yes.
text.
It's
You know what I mean?
it's an ongoing process, but to piggyback off of that, again, I'm going to lean into the subjective side. Someone could always say, well, yes, there's an alt text there, but that description is not up to my standard. So that is where you need to kind of have logic and reason with it. But furthermore, going back to showing length of effort. So alt text, by far and away, number one. Next up, it would simply be contrast. And so this is one that kind of, I think,
Wait,
falls.
Before you move on, how do you guys remediate the alt text? Do you guys leverage AI?
Great
And
question. Yeah.
how
Thank you,
did you do it
Carlos.
before? Yeah, how did you do it before AI?
So before AI, and it's still a valid route to go, which is manual remediation. So that is literally having, whether you have a team internally or you hire consultants, and they literally go through page by page, picture by picture, icon by icon, and they put those alt texts appropriately throughout the website. Where we came in, or what we provide today, is leveraging AI, right? So it is one line of JavaScript that's injected into the website. The first 48 hours, Carlos, are the most important. Reason being, our engine is scanning through all the pictures, all the pages, all the icons throughout the website. After the 48 hours, it appropriately has these descriptions throughout the website. Furthermore, and this is the area that I think is the most frustrating, even if you're making the effort to remediate, staying on top of it, right? So let's say you, from a financial perspective, you have the means, you're more than fine with going forward with this type of process. Even if you adequately go through and make the manual remediations, as soon as you add a new, landing page or any new aspect to that after the audit and remediation, technically speaking, you should open up another ticket and apply these remediations. So coming full circle, this is what our solution provides. Because it's scanning every 24 hours, it's adjusting to your website accordingly.
So I have for the alt text is a good rule of thumb to always just, whatever the picture is, make sure the alt text is about that picture.
Yes. And so we actually leverage image recognition technology to help, expedite that process, but also make it efficient and effective.
Gosh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Great question.
So just for clarity, Colin, and this is something I've always kind of struggled with widget wise.
Mhm.
So is a widget ultimately overlaying all this data to the user, or is it still up to the webmaster or person that manages the website to add all this information? The widget just kind of reports, or the backend sort of reports, hey, here's what you're still missing that we can't do for you.
Yeah. So another great question. So the liability will always fall, at least all the way up until now. It will fall on the owner of the website.
Sure.
Yep. So our solution, it sits on top of the website, right? So it's not making permanent changes per se to the domain. So it's user base, right? So waiting for the individual to engage with it, and then it'll populate the according remediations based on the disability that's being activated.
I got you. So it's more like it's proactive in sense that it's already scanned your website, but it's reactive where it's going to show the ideal settings for that disability, right? Whether it's somebody that can't see well or somebody that can't use the mouse.
Exactly, right? So there are so many different combinations, and there are plenty of instances where they're checking off 2 to 3 of these preset profiles, if you will. So we enable the user to make these custom adjustments on the fly, and just making it swift. And then another thing I would add to furthermore versus when I go back to comparing manual in our solution is it engages with the user in itself, right? You're going through and you're making these adjustments versus treating everything as the same, right? So allowing them to make the needed adjustments that they think is necessary for them.
Gotcha. I'm going to throw a curveball at you, Colin. How does
Oh
Google
boy.
or specifically YouTube gets around the closed captioning in all videos? Because obviously that's vital to be ADA compliant, right?
Yes.
They're actually doing it now. They're literally, it's a new update that they're going to start to add automatically new languages and captions to all your videos.
That's
So
huge.
They've been doing it for a while. Like it's nothing new where they'll actually output or transcribe the video, right? And create the closed captions. But like that's fairly new. Like how did they get around it before? Like was Google just getting
I think there's probably litigation right now, and they're delaying the like I wouldn't doubt all these bigger companies have some sort of lawsuit thrown against them.
Yeah.
It's never going to see the light of day. You know what I mean?
It's a great question. And honestly, I have asked those questions as well. But with regards to video, that is one aspect because we provide PDF remediations, as I mentioned before, websites, user testing, the whole 9 yards. But when it comes to video, it's extremely expensive. Just to be completely transparent, I actually suggest for clients to leverage YouTube because it's free. The one asterisk with that, though, and this is kind of going to be a comparison to alt text, because these subtitles are coming up, or closed caption, if you will, are coming up automatically. It's not going to be 100% accurate.
right?
But at the end of the day, you really have to come down because there's no in between of using YouTube or paying someone or a service to go through and put those closed captions in there. It's a there's no middle ground for that.
Yeah, I remember pre-ADA era, ADA widget era, we had a customer that was getting demand letters all the time. And we had brought up the video issue, right? Because we were using the wave tool to identify all the ADA issues. And they just basically said, you know what, take the videos down. We don't care. We'd rather not deal with it. We'd rather not be held liable. Just take them down.
It's really difficult to stay on top of, but to be honest, I'm encouraging companies like YouTube, right, to make it easy, because at the end of the day, the main goal is still the same: helping to make sites accessible, whether it's the content, the PDFs, the website, so it's all inclusive. That's the main goal at the end of the
I got you. So yeah, like kind of like back to the topic though.
Yeah.
What are like the most, like if you could name like 3 or 4 of the most common accessibility problems that we see today, right? We just mentioned alt text, we mentioned closed captions on video. What else can you see out there?
Yep. So alt text, color contrast is one, right? Because a lot of times, let me just quickly focus on mom and pops, right? It's tough it's not tough, but it gets overlooked a lot with color contrast, because when design comes in, and understandably so, they want to make the website their own, right? It wants to reflect the brand and imaging and likeness that they choose. But the difficulty is when you are adhering to the WCAG, you find, especially from mom and pops, right? They're either, and I've seen numerous times, they're either reverting back to what I call design from the 90s, right? Very dark, no liveliness. or companies just take their website down entirely. So color contrast, you can make these adjustments on the fly within our widget. So I just want to put that asterisk in there. And then number 3, I would say it would be tied with keyboard navigation. So you need to effectively, or a website owner needs to effectively have the ability for a user to simply hit tab and it will go accordingly along the website. Within that, there are issues with drop-down menus, right? So a lot of times it'll either skip over entirely or it'll skip over certain submenus. And then within that too, pop-ups, right? So let's think, within the keyboard navigation, let's say you wanted to check out and get your pizza. The keyboard navigation needs to switch and go to that pop-up, and there's difficulties within that.
Yeah, Jed, can you speak on the contrast side, right? It's always
Yes.
when you do the audit.
So I see people designing sites that, for me, from a perspective, and I can see normal, that have really bad contrast. So that's going to be like dark text on a dark background, or like red on purple, like just awful. Like if it's already awful, like visually for you, just imagine how awful it would be for somebody that's like colorblind. They're going to see literally the same, like they won't see the color. You know what I mean? They'll see just nothing because it looks the same. So yeah, the contrast, I could see doing just a simple, clean, plain site is like easy. Like when you start doing background imagery and stuff on top of background imagery that has background colors, that has different color text, it starts to just be a nightmare.
It can, and it's certainly frustrating, right? Going back to how large this document is, it's 1,000 pages, right? So within that 1,000 pages, there's so many different combinations that don't meet the standards. And so to the average user, or for even someone who has been building websites for decades, this is a constant maintenance. It's constantly ongoing. It certainly can be frustrating, but not to drink the Kool-Aid too much. Hopefully, that's what we're here to solve.
Yeah, cool.
So, Colin, remember back in the day, again, this is like pre-ADA widgets. The only way to successfully do ADA audits was with a little Chrome extension called the Wave tool.
Yeah.
And the pain point there was that you had to go through every single page manually.
Yes.
Think about it. You have sites that have hundreds or thousands of pages, right? It can be pretty tedious. It came down to for us where we were able to partner up with a company that actually used the Wave API tool and would automatically scan pages for us. But then we would have to manually remediate them. But then as soon as it became very expensive for the customer, though, because it's something we do on a monthly basis, right?
Yeah.
And then as the ADA widgets came out, we just kind of brought it up to the customer and showed them, hey, this is much better value. You won't have to pay us all this money every month to do the scans, run through the reports, fix any issues that are there.
And to just kind of feed off that, if I love analogies, by the way. So if I were to use an analogy, it's like going to the doctor, right, and getting that necessarily prescription, right? So it's not a one size fits all, right?
Doubt,
So there are, why I bring that up, there are instances where I would suggest, right, because we provide manual remediation as well through these audits. There are instances, depending on the size, complexity, dynamic nature of the website. I wouldn't suggest that for necessarily a mom and pop, but there are instances where companies 100% should leverage it. So it just kind of comes down to being honest with the website in itself and really what is being required.
Yeah. And Colin, talk to us about deterrence. So do you guys have any studies of what happens when somebody puts the widget on their website, whether it's a small or large company? Do the intent letters dramatically reduce?
So data within that, because that would mean that we would have direct access to the government showcasing, we were going to go after this website, but we're not going to go after this website now, right? The only thing that we can show is that through the use of our litigation support, if there is a complaint and the website owner has our solution installed, if they would still carry out a lawsuit, there is to this day, there's been zero, effective lawsuits that have been moved forward, right? And so it really comes down to a 360-degree approach. So not just making it easier and not just making it dynamic, but we live in the U.S. Unfortunately, people can get sued for wearing a gray T-shirt, right? So it's our job and responsibility that if there is a complaint, that, our legal team, litigation support team will poke holes in it. And so to expand on that a little more, let's say someone complains about your client's, website, abc.com. And let's say that they're saying the alt text, they're not up to par, they're not being descriptive enough. From there, we can do a multitude of things, right? First off, we can show what the website looked like from a remediation perspective before installed and after accessiBe is installed. Furthermore, depending on how long they've been using us, they'll have this library of reports. That's another great way to show length and effort, right? How seriously is this company taking meeting these demands? And we can drill down even more, right? We can utilize user testing, right? We can have people on our end with a particular set of disabilities on a recorded session, going through the exact prompts that are a quote unquote of a legal complaint, and showcasing that it is in fact compliant. So it's all about, meeting these specific complaints and these customer needs in a 360 degrees approach.
Yeah, Judd, you remember when the mobile interface was a new feature?
That was tough for a while.
Responsive CSS came out.
Yeah, remember when that was a new feature and nobody kind of like really wanted it? And I remember we used to quote it separately on estimates. But
yeah, you couldn't. So responsive CSS wasn't actually out yet. You're talking about like way before, like so you'd have a mobile version of the website built
even that too, like a whole separate website running on a subdomain that was mobile friendly, right? Yeah, but even when responsive CSS was out, where you can define the different breakpoints, you would ask customers like, "Hey, do you want to make your website mobile friendly?" And 9 out of 10 times they would say no. Until the day Google announced, "Hey, if your website is mobile friendly, you're gonna get higher search result rankings
overnight."
From that day,
SEO.
Yeah, from that day on, like everybody wanted a mobile website. It's like we didn't have to ask anymore. In fact, we started to like just factor it into the estimate. This kind of reminds me. This reminds me of the same thing. Like we've had a few customers say no to the widget because we ask all our customers if they want the widget on their website, and then the minute they get a letter of intent, it's like there's no questions asked. They just want the widget right away.
Yeah. Another thing,
I'm gonna have to remind several people that I know, like you guys need to have more support and because you're just a ticking time bomb waiting to happen.
Yeah. And then like Judd, you know what happens too? Like they come back to the agency.
I tell everybody that I build a website for, they have to be compliant for ADA as well as the cookie compliance. So I let them know all the compliances that they need to be aware of, and it's up to them. But we actually say we're not responsible in terms with any of these compliances unless you want to set forth. So we've notified them and they've acknowledged it.
Yep, nice form of a wager.
Yeah, because it happens a lot. It's like, oh, why didn't you know to do this? That's what our web developers always told. How come you didn't know to do this? Well, first, it wasn't in the requirements, number one. But it's like you're supposed to be this magician that pulls rabbits out of hats all the time. Like, how come you didn't build me an enrollment system for my It's like, what? Like, you wanted a 2-page website. How did this come about? Like the kitchen sink syndrome is a real thing. But this is definitely one of those topics that it's still the Wild West because it is millions of sites that are not compliant.
Oh yeah.
So they can't. They're literally going after. They like I would say these top law firms you're looking at probably said, okay, here's the best case scenario cases that we can go after to get the maximum return. And they probably have a list in each vertical. Yeah. And they have a list of every site, and then they go after them. So they probably go through a whole database of sites, send out all their letters, then go through another database. If there was 20 law firms doing this, it would be, but it will never get across the entire internet. That's the crazy part. Like it's just going to keep out.
And another frustrating aspect too, and this is something to keep in mind, right? A lot of agencies, not a lot, but there's enough, right? That if they're doing the, if it's not just hosting, right? They're doing the design and development. Sometimes they'll have their tag at the bottom of the website. Point being, if that website isn't compliant, a lot of times these law firms will copy and paste, and they'll sift through all the websites that were built by such and such agency, which is unfair. Which is, it's
I had I'm not saying that it happened to me, but I did have someone that contacted me, and then immediately, this was probably like 2017, like a while ago,
Yeah.
local business, local Western store, and they got sued for $30K, and they contacted me to help them. And I told them, I was like, I think at the time I mentioned, I'm not going to say the name because out
Yeah.
of respect to you, one of your competitors, because I don't think you existed just yet. And they, that was like, this is what you need, like call this service and put that on your
Yeah.
website. But the damage was done. They were sued. Nothing you could do. They had to go through the lawsuit because no matter what, it's like Pix rights when you get a royalty free letter. I've had that happen a lot of times where people just put an image from Google Images on their website,
Oh God,
not
yeah.
realizing it's royalty free, and they get the letter, and then it's a song and dance. You know, I
Yeah.
always tell them, it's like a $3,000 letter. I said negotiate to 1,500, and then they'll go and tell them 1,500. And they're like, no, we have to do 2,500. It's like literally a racket, you know, to
There's
get them to
sharks.
sign off.
Yeah.
And
It's
then you have to get them to sign off and saying that you know, from this point onward, any other ones for this particular image, you have to, because if you don't word it right, they could sue you again if it's found somewhere else on, you know, like by chance. And I've had that happen. So it's
and
crazy.
also too, once it becomes not for demand letters, but once there's officially a lawsuit, that is up for, you know, within available to the public. So that makes it even a higher target for to be this a recurring action, so to speak.
Oh, you
So
mean other people come to the table
yeah,
to
oh
sue
yeah,
you for the same thing?
yes, they put you on the
My
bulletin
Lord.
board. Yeah,
Dude, that's worse than the IRS coming after you. Good Lord. Everybody
it's
wants
brutal.
their pound of flesh.
Going back to, I understand, of course, I just want to make this quick little excerpt here, this little asterisk. One of the things that, you know, our marketing team has been focusing on, and to the untrained eye, I mean, there are even times where if I'm, you know, in my leisure time and I'm scrolling and maybe doing some Christmas shopping, a lot of these icons, they do look similar. The one thing, right, to whoever is shopping for this, you know, I would love, right, to reach out to me. But even if you're just competitively looking, I would make sure to ask that vendor, do they adequately apply alt text throughout the website, right? A lot of these widgets, and it's a step in the right direction. I don't want to say it's absolutely nothing. It is a step in the right direction. Most of the times, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's UI adjustments, right? So think of increased font size, scaling, things like that, and contrast as well. But alt text is almost never applied. And that is to kind of reference my 3 things that really where people get dinged from a legal standpoint. Alt text is at the very top. So it's important
Really?
to yeah.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's real. That right there in itself is totally interesting to me, you know, because I mean, there's so many violations of either no alt text or
Mhm.
someone just throwing in a godly amount of SEO terms in the alt text, which is irrelevant to, you know, what the alt text is used for. You know what? It's probably, I would say probably 8 out of 10 people don't even realize what alt text is actually used for.
No.
If I have to think about it,
I
it
mean,
really is about a compliance. Like that is
Well,
the
it was originally designed for screen readers. It's just
yes.
that it became popular because of Google. Google at the time couldn't read an image.
SEO way.
Yes.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it originally came over from screen readers, and Google said, "Hey, this is a great way for us to understand what these images are about on this website. So we're going to use it SEO way, like Jeff says."
You know,
Go
when we do
figure.
like an SEO
Now we're back
survey,
around. Now you need it for
Yeah.
ADA compatibility.
yeah, when we do like an SEO like service for somebody, and one of the things we do is just go to the media library, looking at each image and writing in what the image is.
Yeah. Not only that, your image name should also
Yeah.
match. The actual file
Yeah.
name match the alt tag for optimal.
But now you made me think, because there's you know, companies have like 40,000 SKUs, right? And sometimes the alt text ends up being the SKU number,
Yeah.
which is still
Yeah.
Yeah.
like, right? Think about that.
Well, it's so funny. We do it dynamically sometimes. So we'll
Yeah.
we'll take a title, we take some kind of attribute or some kind of value, and we'll dynamically insert that alt tag image on large catalogs. Because
Well, you could do like, say, supporting image of, and then put title of the page.
yeah,
And, oh, that's not doing what it should. It
Yeah.
gets you kind of a little bit of a
but listen, on an e-commerce website, your product title is ultimately what the page is about. So it can carry over to that alt text, you know?
I'm going to make a plugin though that's going to require you before uploading an image to put in the alt text. That's my mission after
Going
this.
through one by one. Yeah, like a
Yeah, like
checklist.
you're not allowed to upload unless you add the alt text. So if you drag and drop, it's going to be like alt text, alt text, alt text, alt text. Because
So, hey,
clients do it all the time. You do it great SEO, and then they go and create things and just mess everything up. And it's like, anyway. Like if you do an SEO service, that's one thing I hate visual builders for. Like clients, if they have the ability to add, edit things, they tend to mess all that up continually.
And then maybe they come back to the agency, asking what happened, why is this happening,
Yeah.
things like that. It's like,
Well, I don't know. You create 5,000 duplicate pages and left them all live. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
yeah,
that's too good.
Colin, because you want to give customers access to their code. It's ultimately their code. It's their app.
Yeah, sir.
But then you have to warn them and say, hey, there are some liabilities here if you're going to come in here and make changes. That's why you hire at the end of the day.
That's why we're moving away from builders. One reason is ADA compliance. Visual builders are a pain in the butt. I want to go back to strict Gutenberg blocks. Follow. I think, that's the other thing. Like WooCommerce, as well as WordPress, have done a great job at adding ADA compliance to the native CMS.
Yeah,
so when you get into a builder, when you get into these builders and stuff, a lot of them don't have it. So you're like starting over, and like I actually probably should have looked that up before the show, but I'm kind of wondering if what plugins out there are ADA compliant when it comes to design, like one checkout page builders and all that kind of stuff, because that's huge. I have to look that one up.
Hey, Colin, coming back to you here and accessiBe, I know that there's a lot of companies out there that do ADA compliance, right?
There are.
And there's ones that offer widgets like for peanuts, right?
Free.
Yeah, give us like the key differences in terms of value and what accessiBe like offers that your competitors don't offer.
It's a great question.
We can point those out, right? Who would you say your biggest competitor is? Would it be UserWay?
Yeah, thou who shall not be named. Yes, UserWay. So the biggest competitors, right? UserWay, AudioEye, Level Access. Level Access focuses primarily on the manual remediation. Let me start with UserWay, right? UserWay is comparable for their paid service. For their paid plan. Any service or any solution that provides a free widget does more harm than good. Right? And I'm going to revert back to the alt text, right? Why it does more harm than good, because, to the untrained eye, if I'm stepping in the shoes of the client or the business owner, it's making a step in the right direction. However, going back to the Saul Goodmans, in their eyes, you are now negligent. It shows that you're aware of the importance of making the site accessible, but didn't go the full length, right? So it's extremely important to go all the way. And so that is the primary biggest difference. I would say widgets as a whole. And there's also, for good reasons, when widgets first came out, there are two schools of thought. I like to think there are three now. Primarily two schools of thought. There is those that think manual remediation is absolutely the only way to go about it. It's the most thorough. And it's the best way for something to be precise and accurate. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but where it does kind of get a little bit more difficult, it's not necessarily as black and white as that, is that not all these owners, right, not these pizzerias or brick and mortar locations that have a few pages on their website can afford $20,000 a year, right? And I'm throwing that number out there. It's not linear, but it's not cheap. Right? Even for a basic website, if you're going through and you're doing an audit of 20 templates at the very least, you're looking, around that ballpark. So going back to widgets, right? Not all widgets are the same. Just because you see the little icon at the bottom, but you want to make sure that they have profiles within there that gear towards, not that the other ones are least important, but this is the gray area where a lot of these widgets don't provide, engage with users that have visual impairments. And so you want the, everything under the sun with regards to the ADA. And so, yeah, I went on a little tangent there, but manual remediation, not all widgets are the same, especially the free ones. And the best route to go, if you can, is a hybrid approach. But
yeah, I agree. anytime you automate something, there's always a big buffer for error, right? Where things aren't getting picked up.
There's no
So
absolutes, even with manual remediation, there's no absolutes.
So so I did look up just now. So when you're building a website, especially WordPress, or the accessibility options, they actually get scored according to Equalized Digital Comprehensive 2025 report testing 19 builders. Cadence was a 100% perfect score, which I never heard of. Generate Press 81% grade. Don't know what that is. EYD, that's 77. Elementor, a 75. And Green
Yeah.
Shift, a 72%. Brizzy was a whopping 22%. Horrible score. Live Composer, which I think's that WP Bakery, that's 32%. Divi was 36%, which is pretty low for Divi. And Seed Pro was 39%. Now, going back to Gutenberg, if you're going to go native Gutenberg, out of the box is 91% already ADA compliant. So that just sold to me why I'm moving away from builders and building like straight up underscore theme, bare bones, and native Gutenberg, because that's one reason. So that's huge.
Yeah.
You opened my eyes here a little bit. I have to talk to you after.
Colin, would you say that there are some industries that are more vulnerable than others at this point in time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Pizza
E-com.
stores?
Yeah. Domino's, Pizza Hut. No.
I name a
E-com.
pizza.
Yeah, e-commerce. Yeah, it just happens to be my favorite food. You can tell I'm hungry. No, by far and away e-commerce, right? E-commerce, and I don't have the exact percentage, but I do know it's close to 3/4 of all complaints. That's including demand
That's a
letters and
big one.
lawsuits. Right
That's a
underneath
whopper.
that, right? Think of state, local government agencies. They were the first wave, right? They're the ones that, before this was applied to all publicly facing websites, state, local government agencies, they were the forefront of this. So,
Wow. So why was that? You think because they're the most vulnerable and fastest to pay?
yeah, well, I think it's optics, right? If
Oh, yeah.
if
Okay.
the Department of Transportation is not, that's where, and again, I'm riffing here, but I would presume that, you know by catching them not having T's crossed and I's dotted, it's a bad look. So,
Yeah.
but ecom by far and the way. The other thing that I would want to talk about too, right? As I previously mentioned, now four main states where these complaints come from: New York, California, Florida, and now Illinois. The full report is not out yet. It usually comes out in March for 2025. But it's important to note, especially for all websites, but for e-commerce, right? Let's say you're living in Idaho. Idaho is not one of those four main states, but as a friendly reminder, the websites are global, right? So you can get a lawsuit from a law firm in New York as it pertains to them, and you get that demand letter lawsuit, right? So there are no lines with regards to these complaints, but again, we're here to at least have a conversation about it and to make it a little bit easier and to provide some, stability.
So, Colin, if a website owner wants to get compliant today, what they should do?
Well, the first thing I would say is to reach out to yourself, right? And so we could provide a brief demonstration, but it really just comes down to step one: understanding the website, right? It is not a one size fits all. So I would want to work with Carlos to make sure, quote unquote, prescribing the right package, if you will, right? Moving forward with regards to Colin, what does it look like if I have a very basic website, right? It's not too dynamic. And how long would it take for accessiBe to get, set up? First and foremost, it's extremely easy. I promise I'm not just saying that because I'm here. Prior to this, I worked in data security. The only reason why I'm bringing this up, there's a lot of red tape and there's a lot of footwork that goes into it. With regards to installing accessiBe, it's one line of JavaScript code. It's injected into the website. Once there's an active license and once the code is injected into the website, it pops up instantaneously. Now, the only thing to keep in mind is we want to wait until 48 hours. Right? 48 hours to allow our engines to sift through all the pages, the pictures, the icons. Then at that point, you're up and running, right? And so we provide trial periods up to 7 days, free, of course. And so, yeah, I would say once installed, after 48 hours, it's doing exactly what's intended to do.
Nice. I'm gonna actually one up you on that. It's gotten a lot easier now.
Yeah.
At least on Shopify and on WordPress, you guys released
Oh,
like actual extensions, right? Obviously, if
yes.
you are in a custom coded world, then yeah, you gotta stick in the script, but you can install and manage the widget right from the back end of either Shopify or WordPress.
Thank you for bringing that up. And that has been a huge focus for our product team to make this as easy as possible, specifically Shopify, right? As you're, creating these websites and for agencies like yourself, Carlos and Judd, you can make it, more of a swift process versus as I was describing it. I'm a bit old school with injecting the code in itself. But yes, good eye on that one.
And I think, like Shopify should partner with you guys to offer like into the plan. And that's kind of like something that, would be interesting.
That may be something, yeah, that we've noticed too. Yeah, that would be
Yeah,
lovely.
that way they can just sign right up through Shopify and have it all be,
Yeah.
that'd be the easiest way.
I got a
I
quick
love
question.
that.
I got a quick
Good
question
luck
for.
with that. Do I get credit? I get credit, right?
Yeah, Judd referred me. Colin, accessiBe. Oh, you're good.
So I got a quick question for you, Colin, which is, and this one always like goes through my head whenever I'm installing the widget or when I'm installing the widget here at Brightcode for customers. A lot of times you can customize the widget color.
Mm-hmm.
My question to you is, do I use a color that is part of the website theme color, or do I do the opposite and just bring in a lot of contrast to the actual widget?
It's a good question, right? I'm just trying to, absorb that completely, right? So the color, I would so we're talking about the icon in itself and the frame around the border,
Yeah, like
right?
the actual widget itself.
I would, the best route to go is to go default, right? So you're going to want to have it there just because, not to say that you can't have that adjustment, but it's a bit of playing with fire, so to speak. Furthermore, we do provide options, right? So there are instances where, and there's no right or wrong, right? Some clients like to have, they don't want to have the icon there in itself. The most important aspect is that it's there, so it doesn't need to be visible. So point being, you can have our solution embedded in the footer of the website. So the first part of that question, I would leave it default. And then the second part, if you, for whatever reason, maybe don't like the color, or maybe you already have a cookie icon, maybe you don't want that to be cluttered, you can have it injected in the footer. And it acts just as it should.
And how does it inject into the footer? Is it just next to like your privacy policy or terms and service of the website?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So if you have terms of service, customer support, it would go right in there as a hyperlink.
Cool. Well, Colin, thanks you so much for having us, man. Can you tell our listeners more about where they can find you?
Absolutely. So my email, right, is going to be my name and last two initials. So it's Colin, HI at accessiBe.com. And then Carlos, after this, I will send a promo code. And so for any of your folks that are interested, whether it's a meeting, a demonstration, or if they would like to set up a plan, we're providing an additional 10% discount.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Carlos, Judd, thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us. Or Colin.
Yeah. Talk soon.